May I take this opportunity to welcome back our colleagues online and of course with you colleagues who are here with us in the venue. Thank you for coming back and for sticking to time. I think we really tried to stick to time. We only have, I think, one more session before we call it the day. Okay, as I said before we took our lunch break, we said we're going to play the videos from University of Limpopo as soon after lunch, and then this is going to be followed by a message of support from the Vice Chancellor from Sosolo University. And then from there, we are going to go into our third session, which is going to be looking at the student voices on gender-based violence, progress, challenges, and the road. And the road ahead. So, AP, are we ready? Okay, perfect. So let's sit back and relax, and we'll listen to the video that is going to be played from University of Limpopo. Apparently, in the morning, there was some mix-ups with the videos that needed to be played from UL. Hence, we're now playing the video that you need to see. Thank you, colleagues. Over to you, AP.
Hi, my name is Majare Munyela. Do not look away. Your silence spread GBV.
My name is Melvin Matudiali. #Stop the femicide.
My name is Mpongudi Bani. No excuse for abuse.
My name is Jeffrey Nangambi Mafana. Do not look away. Your silence spread GBV. Sorry munalili ulela tubuni sungasirete sesitakasia laulo na GBV.
Hi, my name is Prevail Neo Ramatsekisa. Why not 365 days of activism against women and children abuse?
Hi, my name is Rose Madimbe. The University of Limpopo SRC says stop gender-based violence.
My name is Anna Mabina. Women and children are not subhuman beings. Please treat them right.
My name is Milia Chibenga. You destroy a woman, you destroy a nation. My name is Mwako Rapapana. Don't be silent. Speak about GBV.
My name is Ponzo Zudet. Did you know that you can report GBV anonymously?
My name is Francina EMpekweni. Say no to any form of violence.
My name is Lutulanda. Break the silence, end the violence. Together we can create a world free of GBV.
My name is Mohamed Kamoven. Never lift a finger against a woman.
Thank you so much, University of Limpopo, for highlighting or showcasing the efforts that you are doing as an institution in advancing gender equity and transformation. And then from now, before we listen to the message of support from the Vice Chancellor from Sosolo University, there are one or two issues that actually stood out when I was reading about the Vice Chancellor from WUSU, Professor Nolundi Songa. And one of the issues is that she's an advocate for women's rights and children's rights, and she's written extensively on that. And then the other issue, again, you actually see that rarely there's been tremendous growth in the milestones that she's covered ever since she came into leadership as a woman. I think all of you agree that the trajectory of female academics, we cannot compare it with that for male academics, just like what the director for gender-based violence and prevention unit was saying earlier on. We still have very few women that are leading universities, and I think seeing her at the top is showing us that it's possible for us to break the glass ceiling. And one issue that she's so vocal about is the issue of the student voice. I'm so loving this because as soon as she's done with talking, it's the students that are actually going to be coming to the podium to talk. Because as long as we do not have students and we do not actually have their voices, then there's no way that we're going to be able to implement the policies that are inclusive. So she says our students are central to our agenda. We've introduced a culture of engagement with our students. I request all managers, including executives, to embrace this culture of service and care to our students. That is how vocal she has been, that it is important to identify solutions that consider the needs of vulnerable communities. And who are the vulnerable communities that we're talking about today? It's about the women, it's about the children, and also it's about the LGBTQI+ community. May we all sit back and relax as we listen to the message of support from the Vice Chancellor of Walter Sisulu University. Thank you so much.
Good morning. My name is Maggie Linnington, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Teaching and Learning at Walter Sisulu University, and it gives me great pleasure to virtually greet you at this conference of gender practitioners and to welcome you to the Eastern Cape. Universities against GBV or gender-based violence is an appropriate theme for this conference. I often find that in gender-based violence, the voice of the survivor is silenced while the actions of the perpetrator are often hidden, or the perpetrator themselves is often hidden. The term gender-based violence for me, I find in itself a term that hides the actions and the identity of perpetrators, and it diminishes for me the violence to being much less than it actually is. Gender-based violence is, for me, a hate crime against the other in terms of gender. Fear creates the hate, and the hate creates the violence. And so by calling it gender-based violence, it seems as if the violence and the foundation of the violence is due to someone's gender. Meanwhile, the violence and the foundation of the violence is someone's fear of another gender and is expressed through a hate crime. So I would love to see the terminology of gender-based violence being changed to a hate crime of gender. Labeling it gender-based violence doesn't indicate that the basis of the violence is actually not the gender, but the hatred of a person for someone who's different in some way or other, based on their own personal fears often, and personal experiences. It's a terminology that I think reflects the patriarchy of the world in terms of it being globally accepted to be called gender-based violence. The second thought that I had when it comes to language and gender-based violence that I think hides both the perpetrator and silences the voice of the survivor is using the terminology of victim empowerment units. Firstly, I am not a victim. I'm a survivor. I might have been a victim 20 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 5 days ago. But now I'm a survivor. And victim empowerment units should seriously be reconsidered to be named survival enabling units, or survivor enabling units, or survivor support units. If we focus on ourselves being victims, we lose our voice as a survivor. If we focus on ourselves being victims, we focus on the past and not the future. The second reason I don't like victim empowerment units is it is really quite patronizing for me to think I can empower anyone. I can't. I can create an enabling environment where people can empower themselves. And the whole terminology of victim empowerment units suggests a past where someone is stuck and someone else needs to actually help them out, rather than suggesting someone who's walking towards the future and who is looking for support into that future. A future of recovery from a hate crime. My last point is, if you look at the headlines often of gender-based violence, whether it's against women, children, the elderly, or the LGBTQI+ community, it will say, woman was raped, it will say, children was abused. The headlines focus on the survivor and what happened to them, but it does not say who perpetrated that violence. If you read a lot of these headlines, you would say, I'm outraged. Who's doing this? Are there aliens that have come down to the world that are doing this type of thing? Because it doesn't mention who the perpetrators are in our headlines. And I really think that's something we need to change. We need to name both the perpetrator and the victim and not allow perpetrators to be hidden when we say a woman was raped. A woman was raped by someone, or someone raped a woman. But a woman was raped tells a victim story. It doesn't tell a survivor and a perpetrator story. So I think when we talk about universities against gender-based violence, one of the things we can look at is the language that we use that exposes gender-based violence as a hate crime, that doesn't allow perpetrators to be hidden, and that allows the survivors to be heard and to actually have a survival journey and not be labelled as victims. I'm so sorry I can't join you today, and I can't join you for the rest of the week. I do hope that you have a wonderful conference and that the outcomes are everything you expect. Have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. My apologies because I had been informed that it's actually going to be the VC who's going to give a message of support. But be that as it may, I want to applaud Prof. Lennington, who is the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Teaching and Learning from Walter Sisulu University, who has actually taken time to speak from their own lived experiences. There's nothing as powerful as having voice to talk about what you have gone through, the journey, what you have gone through. He touches on so many issues, especially about the issue of hate crime. Something that actually we have been running away from, to say gender-based violence, actually it is a hate crime. And I think it begins with us in the teaching and learning institutions that if we start endorsing that, then we are going to be heard. So a warm applause again for Professor Lennington from speaking from the depth of his heart, giving us a message of support, and also reminding us that this issue, it has to do with all genders and sexualities. Thank you so much. We are going to proceed with the next session in our program, whereby we are going to be having on the podium our students representing different universities. Remember, there are so many universities in the room, and some of them that are actually listening online. Student Voices on Gender-Based Violence. In my years of being a researcher, and actually I think in my years of being a student, I was a student at a very late age when I decided to say, okay, fine, I'm going to go back to school and do my first degree, which I got after I turned 30. 30-something, actually. Please don't start calculating my age. And I've seen changes as years have gone by, that the student voices are becoming more and more. Honestly, if we do not have students in our institutions of teaching and learning, then we do not have a university at all. But as we sit back today and we listen to what the students are going to say on issues of gender-based violence, on progress, challenges, and the road ahead, I always say from my qualitative side of research to say, this is actually rich and in-depth information within a natural setting. What are we going to do about it? We need to publish about these issues when our students talk to us. We need to listen to them. We need to implement what they say because they are the ones that are on the ground. I'm going to call upon from Rhodes University, Miss Asipe Nkalisa. Please come and join us. Thank you so much, Asipe. Thank you. And I'm going to call upon Miss Nicole Berry from Walter Sisulu University. Thank you so much, Nicole. May I also invite Miss Apelele Maliwa from the University of Fort Hare. And I'm also going to invite on stage from Nelson Mandela University, Mick Tumani Nengwa. I hope I pronounced their surname correct. Tumani, thank you so much. And this session will focus on student experiences with gender-based violence, the most common incidents, the underlying drivers, and the effectiveness of student interventions. And our moderator is going to be Advocate Palesa Mpampa. Advocate Palesa Mpampa, I'm just going to read a brief bio about her. Is a human rights activist and gender transformation practitioner. She joined the Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Gender Diversity Officer at the University of Fort Hare in September 2023 as an investigation officer. She has 14 years sector-related experience. She has worked as a senior legal officer at the VITS Gender Equity Office, legal and training manager, and co-acting director at People Opposing Women Abuse Power, and the legal program officer at Women and Law in Southern Africa. She holds a master's degree in law and gender and an admitted advocate of the High Court of South Africa, as well as a mediator accredited by Conflict Dynamics. She has substantial experience in gender-based violence with institutions in higher learning. Where am I? In institutions of higher education, civil society organizations, and world of work. She is familiar with the national, regional, and international human rights landscape for gender equity, inclusivity, and diversity. Gender transformation, policy development, restorative justice, and gender safeguarding measures are central to her practice. She has served at the University of Vets Gender Equity Advisory Committee and at the University Forum. She is a member of the South African Community of Practice for Gender Practitioners in Higher Education, this August event that we're here today, and the University of Fort Hare University Forum. Colleagues, allow me to welcome Advocate Palesa, the Transformation Lady.
Afternoon, colleagues. I hope you are having a good afternoon, and we did enjoy our lunch today. Interestingly, we are gonna end our day quite early today. Our session that will be focusing on as we deliberate is keenly allowing and hearing from students in terms of their experiences. What are the common incidents of gender-based violence that manifest themselves within their spaces? What are the underlying drivers, as well as the effective interventions that they, according to their own understanding and experience, would work for gender transformation in higher institutions. It is my honor to be moderating this session. And of interest in this session is the fact that we've got Ms. Asipe from the University of Rhodes, who has done a research that speaks to student voices and narratives of gender-based violence in high institutions, particularly looking at the universities in the Eastern Cape. So there will be narrative stories that she will reflect on from the universities represented on the panel, and then from that end, we'll then engage in questions and also trying to show how other universities or the students in the respective universities are also trying to advance gender diversity and transformation in their own spaces, primarily focusing on the recommendations that she will share with us based on the study that she has done. Of importance, as we reflect from earlier in the morning, is the fact that there's not a lot of implementation that has been done on the NSP. That trickles down to our DHEAD framework on gender-based violence. We do have a lot of policies in a lot of institutions, but I think what came out also in the morning is that implementation still remains a question. So our students will definitely allow us to also get reflections from their end in terms of what works in their context and what doesn't work. Because of importance is that whenever we do consultation, a lot of work that we do, we need to always remember that they remain a critical stakeholder on issues of gender diversity. And also of importance, they are a majority of our population. And I think we also got an understanding based on the development also of the Sexual Offences Act that students remain a vulnerable group, and that vulnerable group has expanded and has focused more on higher institutions. Our females in higher institutions remain more vulnerable, not forgetting issues of LGBTQIA+ communities and people living with disabilities in the same space. And interestingly, Asipe will also speak about issues of intersectionalities that surface and we need to be alerted to in terms of dealing with gender-based violence. As we kickstart, I'll allow them to introduce themselves in terms of where they're coming from, who are they, and then how are they involved in gender diversity in their respective institutions. Thanks.
Molweni, igama ngu-Asiphe wakwaMxhalisa. I am from the university currently known as Rhodes. The hat I'm wearing today is one of a PhD candidate. I'm universe willing, this is my last week as a student. So that's the work that I'm doing. I am doing research looking at student experiences of gender in higher education in the Eastern Cape universities, post-mass fall movements and during COVID-19. I was a fall-list at Nelson Mandela University, which is why I chose to do this research from 2020. Yes, thank you.
All protocol observed. Before you is Baby Nicole. I am a brand ambassador from Walter Sisulu University. My involvement in student, or let me say GBV programs, comes from the office that I come from, which is the Office of the Vice Chancellor. We run student engagement programs which seek to combat GBV, prevent GBV, as well as fight against GBV. Thank you.
Molweni, igama lam ndinguChumani Olwethu Mcengwa, and I'm from the Nelson Mandela University. The chairperson of a society in the institution called Uniqueer Student Solidarity. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aphelele Maliwa. My pronouns are she, her, hers, they, them, theirs, if you would prefer. I am a master's student at the Faculty of Law in the University of Forte, but I work, and also I am a student, but I work under the Gender-Based Violence Prevention and Gender Diversity Office that is situated under the Vice Chancellor's Office. Today, I am wearing the cap of being the GBV champion student coordinator. I coordinate our student GBV champions as we seek to advocate for gender equality, promote inclusivity and inclusive policies, and raise awareness about gender diversity. My role includes supervising the champions to drive change across campus, ensuring a supportive and safe environment for all students that are in our institution. Through this, promoting gender transformation in the institution. Thank you very much.
Thanks to my panelists for those interesting introductions. I will, at this point, allow Asiphe to take us through the research that will give us grounding in terms of what's there, what's happening, where are we in terms of issues of gender transformation in higher institutions from the student perspective. Particularly, I would like her to speak about, just give us a summary of the student narratives, talked to your theory of intersectionalities that you apply in your study, and also just a brief on gender and gendered language and your key recommendations in roughly your 10 minutes, if we can. Thanks.
No, thank you very much. So what I will share with you for 10 minutes, actually let's say 5, is a particular chapter in my PhD titled Siphefumla Ngenxeba. So I deliberately wrote my PhD in a language in which I think in. So I use isiXhosa in English, particularly when dealing with collaborators. So you will see in the narratives that I'm sharing, I don't speak about participants. I didn't work with participants. I worked with students who became collaborators in the research. We don't have time to deal with what that means, but it created a safe space for them to design my methodology and methods, which is why they then became my collaborators. So I had a beautiful presentation with pictures for you, but we couldn't show it today. So my collaborators used pictures to tell their narratives and experiences in higher education, as well as poems and a conversation. So my method was ukuncokola. So I had conversations with students from 4 different universities. The most difficult one was Walter Sisulu because it has 1 million campuses that I had to visit. So I chose just a few narratives from the narratives I spoke about. But Prof. Mabizela spoke about us carrying amanxeba, and the basis of my research is also because I carry some of those wounds. So without wasting any time, the significance of locating gender in student experiences. So my study is locating gender in student experiences which have got deeper underlying structures and mechanisms that retain the status quo of who holds power and to what end have institutions achieved transformation. Locating gender is necessary in order to bring gender mainstreaming, gender discussions into the conversation of transformation in higher education. So today we will be wrestling with those challenges through lived experiences as shared by students from Mandela, University of Fort Hare, Rhodes University, and Walter Sisulu University. Interesting fact about the PhD is that in chapter 1, I open it with my own story, my own narrative, and I've termed that using a poem from Usisi Mthunzikazi as Isipili Sokuqala. So the research is based on 2 contexts that the university found itself in recently, and that is the movements such as Rhodes Must Fall, which contested the space in the university. So I base my findings on this context of the university as the physical and the social space, but also how COVID-19, in the context of GBV, actually sent students back to the location of their violence, which is their home, a place that is supposedly to be a sacred space. So in my analysis, I use the theory of intersectionality, which is grounded in a long tradition of Black feminist activism. And I borrow a lot of literature from Crenshaw's idea of intersectionality, structural intersectionality, political intersectionality, representational intersectionality. And I particularly borrowed 3 things in those studies, and that is the existence of both power and privilege. We often speak about gender-based violence as violence that doesn't choose any gender, any race. In my research, I look at the systems of oppression that makes it difficult for Black female students, particularly in the Eastern Cape universities. But also, I borrow this idea of an intersectional walk. So I took intersectional walks physically with my collaborators as we're having these conversations, taking a walk of the intersecting systems that they face. So as an analytical tool, I use this theory to view categories of race, class, gender, sexuality, nationality, ability, ethnicity, age, infinity, as requiring both identification and understanding of how they mutually shape one another. If I had time, I'll tell you beautiful stories about how intersectionality actually left no space for me to decide to which experiences are intersectional. So my collaborators actually listed out in conversation the categories or systems that they face without me having to only look at the ones that in literature of intersectionality. So one of the findings is Siphefumula ngenxeba, embodied suffering and living in fear for female students. Now you'd know the Siphefumula ngenxeba. Many young people love saying it, Klabegowa. But it came prominent in 2019 on an outsurance advertisement which coincided with the tragic death of Uyenene Mkhwetyane. And specifically in that year, there were more than 53,000 cases that were reported of sexual offenses. And out of those numbers, it was about 146 per day. And that was between the year 2019 and 2020. And those are reported cases. So I opened this chapter with a quotation from one of my collaborators, Linda. Linda and I had a beautiful journey because she was never really invited to be in my study. She saw me at Walter Sisulu University, and I was just busy speaking with other students to try and, get them to the project. And she came to me and she was like, I hear Nglasisi who's asking people to talk, and I need to talk to you. So for about 2 accounts of our interview, I did not record the conversation with Linda because it was very personal that I needed to be a human being before a researcher. Only the 3rd time that we started having or building into my project. So the quote says, coming to university was a way for me to escape the drama that was going on at home. And it came from a conversation where Linda had hoped that the university would be her another home and that the university will be her safe space. So Linda comes from Libode, and she was speaking around what I discuss in collaboration with Professor Motseme as embodied suffering, ngamanxeba, which are configured through embodied suffering and the survival modes that one has to have in order to protect themselves from pain. So she was sharing her experience of how she grew up without parents and how she grew up KwaMakazi and how the 2 boys KwaMakazi used to sexually harass her up until she applied for university. So for her, university was an escape from home. And I do a lot of argument about how home, as Usisi Mthunzikazi says, ingati sisonga sompago. So when you go home, there's a specific scent that you feel when you are home that makes you feel like you can let your guard down, and as a sacred space, and how those particular spaces that ought to be sacred spaces are actually spaces and sites of violence. And I look at this, looking at what universities can do for those students, as Prof. Mabizela said, for those students that bring amanxeba wabo to universities. What are some of the spaces that universities can offer in order for them to protect, or rather to assist the survivors of gender-based violence from their homes? And I argue that to some extent, for example, at Rhodes University, students are sent out back at homes for recess without understanding or even acknowledging the idea of imfihlo that they have to keep on keeping at home, and that also goes with sexuality. So what types of spaces do we create for students to know that akunyanzelekanga bayigcine imfihlo yekhaya? What do I mean by this? In homes, when gender-based violence happens, and Linda shared this in her narrative, is that iyaxoxwa ekhaya. That means it is dealt with without any justice that is being served. So universities ought to offer spaces where the survivors of gender-based violence from their homes understand ukuthi akunyanzelekanga bayigcine imfihlo. They don't need to keep the secret of what has happened to them. Because universities are the micro ecosystem that mirrors the broader society. So violences that are taking place at home, ikhaya, are also violences which universities play a part in terms of re-victimizing the survivors, because, as Olinda is saying, everything at the university will be a safe space, but it didn't turn out to be that. Crenshaw looks at the idea and the need that men have in order to manifest Black women's control by not just the system of male power dominance, but the allowance of sexual promiscuity. And we see sexual promiscuity in black communities, where umalume is able to touch umchana without any repercussions, even in ways in which that are improper, teaching us from a very young age that it is okay for umalume to touch you in improper places. Now, the question we need to ask ourselves is the awareness that we're raising only for the cases that are taking place in universities? How much support do we offer for the gender-based violence survivors that come from homes where they get re-victimized, coming back to the university system and having to also face issues of race, issues of gender, issues of class within their residences? And I argue this based on the Nelson Mandela University context, where most of the residences that students live in are outside of campus sites, and in such cases, issues of transport, issues of safety in residences were really raised in the narratives that I worked with, because they have to walk on campus late, and because to some extent, only those who come from marginalized communities stay in Central, and only those who can afford stay in Summerstrand. The things that happen in Central, the university to some extent do not engage with those because it's off-campus housing. The other narrative that I would like to share is one by Siphokazi, who comes from Rhodes University. And I would like to read this quotation. I had to separate from the movement during the RU reference list. In politics, there are many trade-offs expected from a woman. However, I was not ready to trade off my safety and being as a woman. Violence and alienation during the protests were part of the space triggers. I was aware of gender dynamics in university. However, I did not have the language for it. And when the reference list came, the males in the political formation distanced themselves from this crucial problem. The other thing was that comrades were protecting one of the names on the list. And that made me very angry, as I knew that even though nothing had happened to me, the woman being assaulted and getting no justice could be me one day. Rhodes University reference list is one elephant in the room that we are so afraid to talk about. It is also one triggering element because the trade-offs and the casualties of that war were actually gender-based violence survivors and activists. So outside of that, even though there has been policies that they've been crafted in order to deal with gender-based violence, the repercussion of what that has done to the survivors and the activists that were part of that have not been dealt with. During the time of Rhodes reference list, at Nelson Mandela, we had a reference list of our own. I lost a contract because of that. And that's just a small bit that you have to pay. But I remember there was a protest during graduation of one of the ceremonies of graduations in April. And during that time, one of the offenders was graduating. And the most painful thing is that he had actually violated one of the activists who had to stand with a placard during graduation because nothing has happened to that person. The other finding was the impact of gender-based violence on university choices for prospective students. Despite universities' efforts to address gender-based violence, incidents as the RE reference list and associated protests have contributed to the fear of safety among students and prospective students. This was shared in a sentiment by Uluyanda, speaking about how her mother did not want her to come to Rhodes University because it is a rape university. And because of that, she then went to Nelson Mandela University. But the problem with that is she was in the campus where 2 students were sexually assaulted at 2nd Avenue campus. So that sentiment actually showed her that it doesn't matter where you are. By virtue of having a vagina, you are a walking target. So I have some recommendations here when it comes to that. I'll share the section on cross-institutional recommendations. So there has been conversations on decolonization in universities, and part of the discussions were focused on institutional cultures. I argue that there hasn't been much reform on institutional cultures, particularly one that's deliberate on gender issues, in terms of statements, in terms of discussions. And that also means the creation of spaces like care officers, where task teams are being put together in order to ensure safe houses. At Mandela, for as long as I've been here, for as long as I've been there, we fought for a safe house. And I think this is where they have it now. But it was a fight that they could not resolve based on you just put a brick and a cement or sign an agreement to buy a house. And that was a big fight that is now assisting a lot of gender-based violence survivors, because when you open a case of gender-based violence previously at Nelson Mandela University and you stayed in the same residence as the person, it never mattered. You stayed with them in the same building as the process was undergoing. So that means you had to continue seeing the person that took away your humanity. So I'm arguing that added to that, there has to be care officers, because some survivors of gender-based violence are not yet ready to open cases. So that means those care officers are spaces where they go and talk, and that means there has to be a therapist on site. At Mandela, we started a group called Activist Connection. In Activist Connection, what time do I have? 2 minutes? In Activist Connections, we did a healing day. It backfired to the point where we had about 3 mental breakdowns. In that care day, every single person will stand up and speak about what had happened to them when they were 5, when they were 3, which are those cases that the justice system of South Africa would never solve for you. The only problem that we did there, we never had a therapist. So my time is up, okay? But yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Asipe. It really deserves a round of applause. There's a lot that you can share. Just in the interest of time, I mean, you've really sparked interest. We are really looking forward to that research. We will engage with it. It really touches on very important aspects of safety in universities. Of interest was the reality that we are a wounded society. Indeed, we are a wounded society, and our universities continue as unsafe spaces. They are considered by us students as an escape from home, from the trauma that they experience at home. But however, when they get there, the reality is something else. So those are things that we need to really think about it. I know amongst us we do have student affairs practitioners, your residents, your counseling units. We do have employee relations. We do have a lot of practitioners in the space that can help us think around how do we entirely create this safe space to be what it is. Coincidentally, even during COVID, we were reminded of how unsafe homes are because of an influx of students who wanted to remain in university, even during the highest level of COVID, where we wouldn't be allowed to be interacting at close proximity, and most of the students were requested to be at home. Universities at that time received a lot of requests, special requests, and that tells us about the trauma, what's happening at home. Homes are unsafe spaces, and equally so, unfortunately, even our universities remain unsafe spaces. Interestingly, because of the developments that we have talked about, I would want our other panelists to reflect on what comes out of your narratives, and then what is it? Take us through what are some of the things that they are doing in their respective universities. You did talk about safe houses that have been established at Nelson Mandela University. I would want, first of all, to start with Aphelele Maliwa. Aphelele will take us through through awareness initiatives that are done within the University of Fort Hare. But also, before you talk to the issue of awareness initiatives that you do in terms of advancing student engagement, dealing with issues of behavioral change, I want you to also speak about the fact that the University of Fort Hare also has safe houses and how that helps to address the challenges that Asipe talked about in terms of insecurities, where you'd find that survivors and respondents are staying in the same residences. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. P. In reflecting of how it works for us as the University of Fort Hare, having a safe house in dealing with GBV in our institution, it has had a great impact in the sense that our survivors feel much more safe and utilizing the space in making sure that they are safe and in making sure that we implement the policies that are there nationally and within the institution and within the DHEAD framework and higher health, of which it gives us a great advantage. And even launching the office at the Alice campus, having a safe space, a bedroom that is within the office, that speaks to the comfort that we give to our GBV survivors in creating a safe space and making sure that our survivors or our students feel seen after incidences that happen to them, and in making sure that we preach and implement the safe space that we always advocate for. Now, in touching on the initiatives that we are driving as the University of Fort Hare, particularly involving our student GBV champions, as we did identify that in order for us as the institution to cover more ground and to make sure that it works for us, we had to approach the primary stakeholders in saying that you are the people that are vulnerable in the institution and you are the primary stakeholders, and in making use of them, we did identify them. We did identify GBV champions that do the work and do the initiatives of doing the peer engagements and making sure that we implement the change that we are driving within our institution. As a transformation office, we knew what was the purpose, or what is the purpose of the office in particular, in knowing that we deal with gender diversity, gender-based violence prevention, and the most common effect that is killing our institutions, substance abuse. So we then sat down and made sure that we want to cover all the components that are within the purpose that we want to serve as the office, and we came up with 3 campaigns that address these certain problems that we have, being Transcend UFH, focusing on gender diversity and gender inclusion within our campus. The second being Reclaiming a Safer UFH, addressing GBV prevention and intervention. And lastly, the last campaign being Know Your Limit, raising awareness about substance and alcohol abuse, as we did note that we have a problem of our students abusing substances and having a major problem of our students leaning more towards alcohol in everything that they do, and those GBV incidents emanate from that particular problem that they have. So in getting these student GBV champions, we knew that we have to train them, as we did, and equip them with the necessary knowledge to advocate for gender diversity and to challenge harmful stereotypes, as it was reflected here, that we come from certain backgrounds, that we already have certain stereotypes and cultural norms that have been instilled in us. So we knew that we had a task of trying to change and remold the personalities and shapes that we have accepted in the institution. And we have done this with our GBV champions through workshops and discussions for social media outreach, and for our champions to help us promote the understanding of transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming identities, and fostering an atmosphere of respect and acceptance in knowing what is the purpose of the office. So in touching on specifically reclaiming a safer UFH, so
Sorry, AP.
Yes, Ms. B.
Yeah, I think you have said enough for just covering holistically those key campaigns. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It really gives us a sense of what kind of campaigns, what are they driving, what is the purpose, and of importance is that you are not also forgetting the issue, the reality of high use of alcohol with students, within student spaces. And that's quite important, and the issue of inclusivity. And on that, I would like to pass on to the next panelist, where I would allow Nicole from Walter Sisulu University to take us through how the student ambassadors incorporate the use of technology in advancing gender transformation and reporting. I want you, Nicole, to speak about the portal that you use, who has created it, where is it located, and how do students use it as a referral platform? And from that point, how do you then engage in terms of educational initiatives that are targeting students? Thanks. It's quite interesting that it also, Asipe did talk about the Winene app, which is a way in which students can engage for purposes of making sure that they are safe in higher institutions. And yeah, also has got this quite interesting platform that has been created by students themselves that I want us, Nicole, to take us through it. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. As a brand ambassador from Walter Sisulu University, one of our visions for Vision 2030, which is our university vision, is saying that we are a technology-infused African university. So as brand ambassadors, we sat and had long deliberations on how can we infuse technology into becoming a reporting mechanism within our institution. So then we decided that let us launch a website called My Safe Space. My Safe Space is a website that was developed and launched by WUSU brand ambassadors. The web application gives students a voice to express their concerns within the university. The web comes with a joint effort from brand ambassadors with collaboration with the ICT department. This website was done to establish secure and protected environment for students to address an array of social issues which they are faced with that include GBV, bullying, harassment, mental issues, and academic issues. This My Safe Space website is accessible through any device. It is user-friendly and it guarantees confidentiality. Our My Safe Space website is a website whereby students log on to the university website to report incidences of GBV from the comfort of their residences or their homes or their cell phones rather. My Safe Space is accessed by putting or logging into the university website with your student number and your unique university password that you are given to. My Safe Space has two options whereby you can report anonymously or you can come as you are. Through the My Safe Space, you have an option to attach your evidence, be it a document, picture, or even a video or recording. So then with our My Safe Space portal, you also are able to attach a witness. If you have a witness, the witness, you can mention them on the My Safe Space portal, and thereafter, whenever an incident is lodged into the My Safe Space portal, the incident reports onto the ambassadors' emails. So the incidences do not pile up or wait for ambassadors to log into the My Safe Space portal, but rather we get notifications every time there is an incident which is reported. As student ambassadors, we saw that, okay, we saw that we have our physical engagement activities that we have or that we host, such as workshops, such as seminars, whereby we speak to our students regarding GBV cases. But then we also decided that with this My Say space, we as student ambassadors can collaborate with other units within our university to help solve, compact, as well as protect GBV victims, or let me say survivors rather. In the My Say space collaboration with other units, if a issue that or incident that is reported is related to GBV, the ambassadors work with units that are related to GBV within the university to solve them. For instance, if it is a harassment or sexual harassment, any type of harassment incident, we work with the correct office, or let me say the relevant office, in order to escalate and solve the issue. So on the side of the student, when you report on our My Say Space portal, you are going to have an option that's going to tell you that your report or incident has been lodged, your report or incident is in progress, your report or incident has been solved. Every time your report changes in the stages, you get a notification on your cell phone or on your laptop. So basically, we work with the judiciary unit, we work with wellness cluster, clinic, as well as residences. If the incident has happened on our residences, we work with the residence department in ensuring that we compact or we solve the GBV issue. As also, at Walter Sisulu University, we also have GBV champions, which are trained and situated in our residences, who work together with the brand ambassadors in order to ensure that GBV incidences that occur at residences are then tabulated or brought forward to us, because we know that some students are vulnerable, do not want to speak, are scared of even their perpetrators. So our GBV champions are students that stay with the students at our residences. So each and every residence has a GBV champion, which is there and helps to help ambassadors get information about GBV cases which occur at our residences. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot. I found that quite profound, that it is developed by students themselves. They are being a part of finding solutions for the issues that they face on a daily basis. Thanks a lot, Nicole. Before I allow our participants to engage with the panelists, I would allow Kumani from Nelson Mandela University to speak about their journey in advancing the rights of queer students in NMU and working on issues of masculinities as a prevention strategy for gender transformation. Thanks, Kumani. Over to you.
Thank you, Ms. P. Okay, a big background about Uniqueer Student Solidarity. So Uniqueer Student Solidarity was founded in the year 2023, which is last year, by a student collective from Cape Town, whom are part of a project called Phefumula Queer Collective, an anti-queerist program, which did its advocacy through theater performances. So actually they were doing art, high schoolers that are doing art in order to showcase advocacy for the LGBTQIA+ community. So now, as you know, that after grade 12, you leave high school, so what's next? It's university. So these students started in 2019, this project, and when it was time for them to go to university, they went their separate ways. I was part of that group. So fortunately enough, I went to the Nelson Mandela University. We have some that are at WUSU, we have some that are at Rhodes, we have some that are at Forte, we have some that are at Wits, CPUT, Stellenbosch University. If I'm talking about Stellenbosch University, I'm talking about the likes of Abongile Kutu. I think people from the Stellenbosch University knows her. So the group of high schoolers then last year sat down virtually. Remember the project, when it started in Cape Town, it was funded by an organization called Triangle Project. So when Triangle Project started the the high schoolers program, we invited back Triangle Project last year to say, okay, these are the issues that the LGBTQIA+, we feel like in our different institutions we have similar issues. How do we then take that project that we had into advancing it and putting it into institutions of higher learning? Then the birth of Uniqueer Student Solidarity started there. So we are guided, as Uniqueer Student Solidarity, we are guided by five pillars, which is our mandate. One is to create safe spaces for the LGBTQIA+ students and allies. Two, to provide LGBTQIA+ political education and sensitization workshop promoting LGBTQIA+ rights and understanding gender policies within institutions of higher learning. 3, to run a student-led sensitization programs and projects. 4, to promote queer engagement and gathering for the community and its allies. 5, work with institutions on queer advocacy while standing off not being a political movement. So we have a very big and a strong relationship with Mandela Pride, as I think the video from the Nelson Mandela University just, it mentioned the 4 programs that the Transformation Office has. One of those programs is Mandela Pride, which is led by Uvuyo. So we are working with Mandela Pride under the Transformation Office, highlighting issues of queer students. We are also part and parcel of Singamadoda program, where we encourage students who are part of the Uniqueer Student Solidarity to be part of the program of Singamadoda offered by NMU in helping redefine positive masculinity. So the program can be accessed under the institution's Moodle page as one of the available courses. So Uniqueer at Nelson Mandela University has been supported by the Transformation Office since 2023 under the Mandela Pride program, and we are currently working on a gender policy advancement focusing on queer students. Currently, Uniqueer is funded by Triangle Project, Gender Dynamics, an international organization called Y+ Global Alliance of Young People Living with HIV, and My Reality campaign. We have hosted over 18 gender equality focused campaigns, both physically and online, highlighting being part of international programs such as My Reality campaign. We have also last week offered some of the members an opportunity to go to VETS, funded by the Eastern Cape government, to AIA program, which was highlighting World of Entrepreneurs Week. So we are also part of the YGAP, which it was a conference last year at VETS by the South African Institute of International Affairs, Youth at SAI. We are part of the YGAP, which is the Youth Gender Action Plan policy. We are part of that group that created that. Our programs under Uniqueer, we have these programs. We have a food bank, which is a financial assistance to all LGBTQIA+ students who are unfunded at the Nelson Mandela Universities, providing financial assistance where possible from our funders, as well as toiletries to assist unfunded students. Our second program is our online psychological support, which we understand that the Nelson Mandela Universities provide psychological support for GBV survivors, but it's only limited, and students, Zbaninzi cases that needed to be attended by the university. So we also offer online psychological support where help is provided by Gender Dynamics in Cape Town. They provide telephonical calls as well as online meetings through having a social worker, or they also provide us with advocacy trainings. And Triangle Project also provides us with social worker online, as well as for institutions such as CPUT, as well as Stellenbosch University. There are also safe homes provided by Triangle for our students that are enrolled in the program under Uniqueer Student Solidarity, and there's also social assistance. So we also have a program that specializes on health services referral. So part of the clinics that you work at, it's Engage, Men Sleeping with Men Health Clinic, which we refer some of our students who are part of the program to, and VETS RHA for trans students to get transgender health services. And then we also have a partnership with Love Alliance, which also have a number of clinics around the country, or even here in the Eastern Cape. I know of in Port Elizabeth, we work with Vets RIH to provide for the LGBTQIA plus students health services. We also have noted that the university has a safe space program, which they host each and every week for students to gather and have tea or snacks where they talk about queer issues. So we have also launched a similar program on our off-campus, more especially at Central. Since Ubutete is Central, we have offered that platform for students that are living in Central on all of our off-campus residences. Lastly, we host also student living events, Joe, where we get together as the LGBTQIA plus and allies and just have a good time and share our stories. Yeah, so that's Uni Queer Student Solidarity. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot, Kumani. That was quite comprehensive. It's quite very comprehensive, and it's helpful for us to benchmark and get an understanding of what it means for us to be genuine and intentional around creating safe spaces for all, making sure that everyone is welcome and feels safe in that diversity. I will now allow our participants to engage, but first of all, I want to give an opportunity to any student in the space who's working with any disability unit in any university presented here, because I can tell that we're missing that for us to be comprehensive. Before then, I allow just to reflect, that student would reflect on what are some of the interventions they're doing, what are some of the key issues they face as students living with disability, and then we can take on the questions. Anati, thanks. With a show of hand, can you see any student who'd want to talk to? Yes. Issues of student living with disability before the questions. And then we can take a round of questions just for them to reflect on what are the issues they are facing and how are they involved in issues of gender transformation. Any student from any university who works with a disability unit? Thanks.
Thank you very much. Can I speak while sitting down?
No problem.
Secondly, happy International Day for people living with disabilities. The 3rd of December is the International Day for people living with disabilities. Actually, I wrote points to comment on the first speaker, but I had to come as one of the students that are living with disabilities within the University of Fort Hare. Speaking is Yomelelane Mabaso, the chairperson for the institution. It's kind of, when you think of these issues that affect people with disabilities. First of all, ma'am, let's take it for example. The cases that usually happen are happening on campuses. Someone who is on a wheelchair, that person automatically can run. So if a case is happening while you're living with a disability, automatically those things affect you. Even if when you belong to the LGBTQI plus community group, they don't even expect you to be in that group because of the disability. So there's a lot of discrimination on your own disability, and then there's a lot of discrimination towards you and your physical appearance. So according to my small research that I'm currently doing and I've done, is that I've just noticed that people with disabilities are more likely to have a higher rate of abuse. One being the fact that, firstly, disabilities are different. You may have a disability that you will not even allow you to use your hands properly. If someone is coming to you to attack you or to rape you, automatically that person has already won because of he has power over you more. So automatically you are living in fear. If you can have a conversation with people that are living with disabilities, why is the reason that you are not going out at night like other people? Some are not even afraid of being discriminated about their disabilities, but if people can find a way to violate them, they may use it anyhow. You remember, we speak it slow, they are living in fear. The same applies to people with disabilities. They are living in fear in terms of, if ingenzeka lento, now what's my own reaction on it and what's my own thing on it? And also, The discrimination in disability is very huge in terms that you may even in a relationship, someone will use the disability to discriminate you while you are in a relationship. I wanna, at least you are 18 and above in this room, so I can say this thing that I'm thinking. Do you know that there are females, when you meet them, I don't prove, ne? I take this from my friends, so there are females, when you meet them and prove, will say, I like you, but you are living with a disability. Is your waist working? Can you do the things that other people are doing? So that simply means you are already discriminated and you're even putting in the other side because of the disability that you are living with. So people with disability, I can attest to you also, those comments, in majority of them are not even relationship because they've already violated. Remember, when we talk about GBV, it's not only physical, it's also emotional, it's also verbal. So the comments that people do to people with disabilities, unfortunately, so someone will see someone with a wheelchair or with crutches, I like her and that, just that one bangendonga. Does that mean because you are working with crutches or you can't be in a relationship? So the risk that people with disabilities are facing in our country, the thing that we are facing is more, and it's more on the emotional side, because I will just share a mini story when I'm going to drop this mic. Someone, I was meditated and I was in a talking stage, let me say it that way, our term as youth. I was in a talking stage with this one. I'm like, okay, fine, everything. She doesn't live with a disability. I'm using a single crash. And then she said to me, as much as I like you and I like the kind of man you are, how will the society view me if I'm dating you? You see? Now, I'm having 2 points on this one. Is the person hiding because of society, but it's how she view me, or is really the society that is also making her to think that way? So that's how emotional and how disability and GBV can end. And trust me, if someone, I know someone who has have a problem mentally. I know people, even social workers that is Africa Zamtat on the other year. I know people when they drunk and Bafika Payana, they want to relieve themselves, they will come to her, and they will go. And that person was even struggling to speak. Who will look for other person? Who will speak for them? Who will go and report those cases? So these are the things that people take advantage of, the people that are living with disabilities in South Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mabasa, for those reflections. I think they are quite important for us to remember that with regard to also the issues of intersectionalities, that if you are a student living with disability, you are at the far receiving end beyond what the normal challenges of able students are. So thanks for that reminder, and also touching on how that you interpret as discrimination. It is discrimination, and it creates a sense of you not being a part of the space that you are in. It also makes us to reflect on whether our communities or our institutions have created a conducive, enabling space for all our students to exist free from discrimination. And also, most importantly, you talked about the issue of sexual citizenship of students living with disability. That is very important for us to also think about them as normal human beings. You know, it's very important for us to reflect on their sexual citizenship. They are entitled to the human rights that all of us are entitled to as first-class citizens of this country. So thanks a lot. Then we can allow questions. I see there's a hand there already next to you, Pori. I think we'll take 4 questions and then allow our panelists to engage. We don't have a lot of time. Maybe I'll allow just the 4 questions, and then they answer the questions and then give us, their last reflections as panelists. Thanks.
Okay, good day to the House at large. My name is Busisiwe, and I'm from the University of the Western Cape. And just to add to the topic of disabilities, as well as when it comes to disabilities, I think it's important to also note that whenever, for us at the University of the Western Cape, our support services, just like the gender equity unit, are towards the outskirts of the university, which makes it difficult for people living with disabilities to even travel to or get to them. So it's very important for us to invest in the infrastructure to allow for students to access it. And even when it comes into infrastructure, we should also look at all the buildings that we have and how we can remodel those buildings in order to make them accessible for people. Another point I would like to touch on would be having sign language as a must in university and having everyone having to take sign language as a class and pass the class in order for us to get in a society that is inclusive and that also understands and learns about disabilities. I think it's very crucial for us to touch on the topic of sign language and having to understand different languages. As well as lastly, when we talk about disabilities, not to also forget how mental disabilities are also added onto that part, like for instance, student living with bipolar, and et cetera, et cetera. And lastly, as my colleague also spoke about stereotypes, as well as how do we change that culture and narrative that people have, and how do we do that in a way that's gonna foster an inclusive community for all around. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. We can continue and take the questions. Thanks.
No, thank you very much. My question is to the PhD student. I've noticed that a lot of research has been done on females and the LGBTQI community. However, there's not much research done on males that are facing GBV issues or cases. So is there any research on that? And also, is there any research on respondent support? Because is there a way that we can integrate respondents back into the society despite all the social ills they have done? And also, I'll take this question to the queer ambassador. What creative expressions ways have you implemented to highlight GBV with students using creative expression instead of just lecture halls or anything? Is there podcasts, such things that attract the student community within your university? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Allow me to take this opportunity to greet each and every person in this house. Before you is Xabiso Fadela, and I want to ask Miss Nicole Berry. Sorry if I'm pronouncing your surname wrongly. I just want to ask regarding the website that you have. My question is, as you all know that there are first-year students who come from deep rural areas. So is there anything that is done to assist them? Because not all of them, they are able to access these websites. And also, my second question is that what happens to a person, as you all know that some cases, they happen when a person is intoxicated. So what happened to that person if her phone or his phone is taken away and does not have an access to the website? So does that mean that person will have to wait for the next day for, yeah, thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Sipo. I am from WITS. I'm one of the interns there. I think this is my second year interning. I have two questions. One is for the PhD student. You mentioned a story, or I guess a slight part in your story where you mentioned there was a strike during a graduation of a student who was graduating who was accused of rape. So do you feel like Rhodes University, the gender office or the transformation office at Rhodes didn't deal with the matter properly, so that for the fact that students had to go to a graduation and had to do a huge debacle to stop this certain student from graduating, right? Do you feel like the roads interventions were procedural and they did as best as they can dealing with a balance of probabilities, right? My second question is to Nicole. I like the idea of social media, and because we're moving with the time, so I think having a website or an app to report cases is very advisable. But my question is, with these certain apps and certain websites, and I guess you can correct me when you answer, you said these are student-led. So if they're student-led and there's a certain student that reports a case, let's say I'm raped and I report a case in my safe space, so correct me, is the matter dealt by the students who are running the website, or are they dealt by a psychosocial person who's more experienced in dealing with the case? And how do you ensure confidentiality? Because if you say there are multiple students who are ambassadors running the program, and there are champions in certain residences that hear students' cases, I sense a bit of re-traumatization in how you perhaps described the website, which could be another issue when you're trying to solve gender-based harm cases. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions. I hope that's the last one.
Good afternoon, colleagues. My question goes to us, all of us here, and the leadership. I am raising a point that it seems like the work that we do and how we carry on in this house is mirroring some of the traumas that we go through. Because I've been watching since in the morning, our interpreters, it's been that one person alone. She's not been taking breaks, and there are recommendations from the regulatory bodies of how often they can go for taking breaks and rehydrating, and we all just looking at her, that she has been the only one person interpreting for us, and we kept quiet, and we're going on. Thank you.
Thank you. I think in terms of the one around interpretation, I think some of us were not aware that in the morning when we started, one of the interpreters was sitting there. I think it was an oversight. Then we requested that they move here so that everybody can see them. So they switched. I also did not realize because they look more or less alike, and also because of the dressing. But I don't want, maybe we did not change them at the 45 minutes requested, but we do take that point and we'll make sure that we address it as we continue in our prospective engagements. We do welcome that. It's a good point so that we don't carry out traumas. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, MC or moderator. My name is Liama Mnyobe from Malta, Sisulu. Mine is a comment. Firstly, I saw them. There were actually two interpreters. I think one of them is gone because I don't see her now. Mine is very, very simple. Can you please protect the panelists, because they will not be able to answer everything. Just on a comment on podcast on WUSU. WUSU is very neutral on GBV. On orientation, we do actually introduce all of these activities that we have, including the programs. To also answer the question that was actually directed to, I think, to Mem there over the PhD. WUSU is very neutral on men also. WUSU has Men in Action that addresses men to teach them about how to be actually men. You understand? So we do not only focus on we do understand that GBV is men versus women, and also women and men. So that's why we are very, very neutral. And in terms of the app, I think the app is very, very clear. I think we are students here. We know that you can log in using another phone. And WUSU is very neutral because we also have securities around. You can also go to the security. You don't have to wait till the next day. Go to the securities. We have social workers. We have everything. So some of the questions, can we just please maybe use our common sense? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. In the interest of time, I've realized that some of the questions had already been answered. I want to give them a last minute to reflect, just to reflect in 1 minute as they close and just share what has been a key highlight on their work, but also Asipe can speak about the issue of the questions that came directly, just briefly. The one of WUSU also of reporting, I think they did specify that when they've received matters, they refer them to different offices that are responsible, and they are also based in the VC's office. And then, answer as far as you can. If you can't give an answer to it, it's okay, just so that you are able to wrap up. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I think because interest of time, it would be difficult to assume someone is unable to respond. But thank you for attempting to respond on our behalf. I think what I want to respond to is the fact that when you engage with literature, you touch on the issues that are happening in universities when it comes to GBV towards men. But at the same time, you look into the intersecting realities of GBV taking place in universities based on the narratives that were shared. One of the key issues is reporting. Male students are afraid to report cases. We've been fighting as an activist at Mandela, one particular student leader who continues to violate young boys first year level. He's still in the university. I think I taught him in third year. He's still there, it's been 15 years. But nothing is done by the universities because the male students don't want to come forward. What I propose is that there has to be research hubs supported, including postdocs, in the harassment offices that we see in universities, where they establish an inter-university GBV research that is a collaborative research in order to research all intersectional issues when it comes to GBV, that inclusive issues of access for students who are differently abled. So with those research hubs, we will get publications, we will gather data, we will publish in order for people to be able to use that. But the protest didn't happen at Rhodes, it happened at Mandela. It was a student, male student, who violated a student during a protest gathering at night. So you see night vigils. It responds to why you don't locate female students in night vigils, because there's violence even with movements themselves. So this violence took place in a GBV movement where this person violated another person in the GBV movement. So basically, universities respond by protecting their image first and foremost. So there was an issue of a statement to protect their image, but also to reprimand even us who did the protest to take relevant channels in order to report as if we haven't done so. So we've never stopped, and fortunately we received support to continue with the movements. I remember we once closed the university and it was just 4 of us. I'm a good colleague of mine, Nobel Opoza, was not here. So we would close Nelson Mandela University, but it just ended there. In fact, they gave us contracts and we started working. And it was an issue of politics of stomach. But yeah, it happened at Nelson Mandela University, not at Rhodes, but it coincided with the RU reference list.
Thank you, thank you.
Thank you for the questions, and thank you so much to my colleague from WSU for helping me capture the questions. I'm going to highlight on the first year students who come from deep rural areas that are not or unable to access our website. No, I want to concur to what my colleague said from WSU. At Walter Sisulu University, before the year or the academic year starts, we have orientation. So we have a series of orientation which is held or hosted by the Directorate of Learning and Teaching, which invites all first-year students, as well as we also have departmental orientations. So in both of those orientations, or in the series of those orientations, brand ambassadors are invited to take the platform and teach or enable students on how to access our My Safe Space portal. And we don't just show them or we teach them via a PowerPoint presentation, but we also have practical examples on how to teach them and how to ensure that within the orientation they do engage or they are attentive into listening to those presentations by having an example of like my 30 seconds, the board game. We have a bingo game that is called My Safe Space game, whereby we have descriptions of each and every term which is used in My Safe Space that enables students not to just listen, but play and be part of the presentation of My Safe Space. So I'd like to say that it is something that is not just presented and it's just spoken, and we know that students, especially first-year students, have a, let me say, a rather little a concentration span, so they are engaged. Like we make them play games to ensure that they will remember My Safe Space, not just as a presentation, but also a game which comes and sits into their heads. So I'd say that that is the first mechanism that we use, that we ensure that My Safe Space, uyahlala kubo. Then coming to an incident, if it happens at night and you are unable to reach your cell phone or your device, as my colleague already alluded, we have security personnel on all of our residences, on campus, off campus. So they are there, they are available to help the student. Then on the following day, it can be also lodged into our My Safe Space portal. Then coming to how do we ensure that there is confidentiality? Firstly, us as ambassadors, we are also trained, and we are 9 in the entire institution. Mthatha has 3 because it is the main campus and has a population of over 4,000 students. So I'm trying to, let me say, I'm trying to fix how you ask the question to say that we have a series of students that I have information or access to sensitive information of the students. No, it is 3 in Mthatha, 3 students, 2 in BCC, 2 in Komani, and 2 in Butterworth. So confidentiality is indeed guaranteed, and we escalate the reported incident to the relevant office of the reported incident. If it is a GBV incident, it is escalated to GBV-related offices. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Creativity, just.
Okay.
Yeah.
To answer to the third speaker, creative ways to attend GPV. I think I already said that we do have student living as one of our programs. So working with the Mandela Pride, we provide by all means accessibility to services such as the psychological services, both online and offline. We have a series of queer webinars that we host, or it's webinars, but we call them queer webinars, every year, which is called My Reality Campaign. So it's a social media campaign where it encourages students to join in social media, make noise about GBV, about living with HIV, where in those queer webinars, by attending, you get prizes, you get data, we provide data. So that's a way trying, yes, I turn it out, yeah. So to allow students to be in those queer webinars, where also we are trained on SoJS by GDX. We also do have a podcast which is hosted by Uvuyontrofe under the Mandela Pride. Yeah, and we also host opening functions. We do have opening functions. We do have activations. One of the activations is hosted by Mandela Pride, which is the flag hosting during the Queer Month. We also have closing functions. Yeah, so those are creative ways. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. AP, as you close, I want you to be very brief. just respond to how we integrate respondents of gender-based violence within institutions, just on that.
Pardon, Ms. B?
Please respond on the integration or support offered to respondents of gender-based violence.
Thank you very much. Just a few seconds. I am disappointed in my people. They didn't protect me. That the moderator suppressed me and took away my time to express what our students have been up to. But okay, it's fine. I forgive you, Ms. P. We come from the same home. It's okay. I'll just give firstly a brief highlight of the transformation work that we have done as a student. Just briefly, the consent dialogue that we had, which was a crucial initiative.
Please, we are out of time. Please
Yes,
speak to the
I'll finish
integration.
fast now. Don't worry.
Integration. Response to respondents.
Yes, Ms. B. It speaks to this consent dialogue spoke to the initiative that we are trying to drive for respondents, which particularly is dominant on male students, and we are trying to implement restorative justice with them in the disciplinary hearings that we have with them in terms of fostering the psychosocial support, as we do not want to exclude them and want them to bring them back in the community, knowing that they acknowledge what they have done, and in accepting that GBV is a serious, harmful problem that is a crisis in the country, but in trying to cap the problem while it's so small, as I said, that we are trying to mold behaviors that come from gender stereotypes and cultural norms. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. As we close, most importantly, we are advised to be proactive and also integrate research hubs within gender transformation offices as institutions of higher learning. I think that will help us a great way in terms of our holistic advancement and accountability on issues of gender transformation. Thank you very much. Can you give a round of applause to our panelists? One last
Whew, what a day. I said it before we went for lunch, to say today we are going to learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I'm actually thinking, when I'm hearing the student voices, and I'm thinking maybe it's high time actually we should have a conference whereby it's just going to be them only telling us about what is happening. We hear those student voices really going out. Without wasting any time, I think we're about to come to the end of our program. We're going to do reflections and announcements, and I think these are just going to be short, because I'm thinking most of the things actually we've covered them throughout the day as we were discussing. But before I do that, we have people that have played a very important role to be where we are today. We've got departments that we actually tap into as institutions of higher learning that do not only guide us, but they're also there to support us in each and every step that we get to take. And one of that department is the Department of Higher Education and Training. And before I actually introduce one of the daughters of the soil that is here, I always want to read about what people have done, because kuthiwa ukufunda kakupheli. And when we were discussing about so many issues, I was like, wow, we are actually preempting. We've actually preempted most of the issues that we talked about, that I know the person that I'm going to introduce to you has been so passionate about talking about these issues each and every time when she's given the stage or the space to talk about. One of the issues that she's talked about is actually the issue that one of our students, who was also bold enough to talk that they are living with a disability, is also the issue of accelerating the environment for persons with disabilities at all levels and making sure that there is an enabling environment. And then she's also talked about the importance of effective monitoring and reporting and evaluating mechanisms of gender-based violence and femicide policies. And if you recall in the morning, we're talking about the issues of accountability and transformation. And there's no way that we're going to be able to account and say we're getting to the issue of transformation if we've not monitored and evaluated. And also, there's one quote that she talked about. She said, whether you like it or not, you cannot talk about, you cannot forget about not talking about issues of inclusion because that is too risky. It's way too risky. And then lastly, she says, have you disclosed your disability in your workplace? If you haven't, please do. Colleagues, may you please allow me to introduce our very own representative from the Department of Higher Education and Training, Miss Ceci Mahlobongwane. Thank you very much for joining us. Please shine, shine, shine. We want to appreciate you taking your time to be with us from today until we end our conference. We do not take this lightly. We know you are busy. You are always going up and down and everything. We appreciate you, and we are looking forward to your presentation tomorrow. We're starting with Ms. Ceci tomorrow with the presentation. Thank you so much for gracing this occasion. Right, so we come to our reflections. And then maybe just one or two announcements before we call it a day. Trust me, even myself, I'm a bit tired. I've been talking since morning. I could do with something very cold to drink. Yeah, so the floor is open. The reflections of the day. What are our takeaway points? What is it that we are taking away today? What is it that we want to add on with what we've discussed today? We just want something that is just brief, and then we do our announcements for tomorrow, and then I think we can wrap it up like that. And I think this also goes, I'm not so sure if there's somebody who was taking any comments that were coming from our colleagues when we're live streaming. Or maybe if there was, we can always read them out tomorrow when we start our program. We've got the roving mics. Any comments? Yes, do we have our colleagues there? Thank you.
Again, I greet you all. On the case of inclusion and people with disabilities or the students with disabilities, I would love to actually add a comment or rather something that I think is of an opinion that could be implemented in most of the higher institutions, because I think it's still lacking. If I see like closely or I look closely, I haven't seen varsities having tournaments where the sporting codes are accommodating the students with disabilities, but rather we are given sports to just, like games or activities to just do on the side when there are tournaments in the institutions. We are like there's never a tournament whereby it's like the students with disabilities of WUSU and NMU are competing for this and that. So can the higher institutions please kind of have some engagements on things like sporting codes, because at some point we are having physical disabilities which now combat us or maybe kind of hinder us from having the physical exercises. But then now if there could be a proposal of the sporting codes of people with disabilities, or maybe that accommodate people with disabilities, maybe we would be motivated to go out there and have the physical exercises. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Any comments? We have a hand there.
Thank you very much. This time I'm not coming on the disability angle. I'm coming on the GBV angle. Comments about the day. One of the speakers, and one I've just noticed when the speakers were talking, is that the GBV that is here in our institutions sometimes is coming from back at home, meaning the mindset that people are bringing in our institutions, they got it from home. I was listening to Linda's story, and I've noticed, what if Linda has a brother, and the brother witnessed him being violated by those two brothers? Of course, that person will come to the institution with that trauma. What if those two brothers were used of violating Linda? Of course, when they come to the institution, they will think Bana is the same thing. I was kind of sad, and it touched me when I heard Bana, even home is no longer a safe space. And the reality of the fact that we don't stay the rest of our lives in the institution. What is Linda feeling when he's going home? So as we are the generation or the students today, we need now, when we are dealing with GBV in our institutions, we are not dealing with students, but people. Before we say we are claiming a safer university, is the person that we are claiming with fine when it comes to GBV? At this topic not triggering the person, and then we deal with that person. And it's always said that, and the reality is that amadoda are the ones that are doing it GBV. I'm saying this as a man. And he said when usisi wexesithi siphefumula ngenxeba, and I look at indoda used to be into yobalekela, but in our days indoda into yobalekela. And the mentality that we come in as a man, I will speak as a man and I will speak the truth. When we come to varsity, we're having that mentality, yo payana maninza machere, so we'll get a machere. But the moment you bring that mentality to university, and then you don't get a machere that you were planning, that is where as cases the GBV is kalakon. So as gents, I think we need to now to do better and think more, and always remember that ubudoda ayiko kucinga ngezantsi kwebhandi. Thank you.
Siyabulela. Do we have any show of hands? I think with those two reflections, I'm just going to be in brief on one issue about my colleague who raised the issue of persons living with disabilities, and also being very intentional about the sports that the universities have to implement. And actually, you know, you have challenged me, because today in the morning around 6, I was calling my colleague, Usis Nos, because I decided to write an article about the day, you know, International Day of Persons Living with Disabilities. So then I got stuck. We do have a disability unit at Forte. I've been there for years, but I didn't even know some of the things that they do, I have to be honest. So I found myself, I even forgot she's supposed to be sleeping. I was calling her. Then eventually she responded. I'm like, girl, bail me out immediately. And said, oh, okay, I'm going to send some slide presentations for you. I'm like, let's do a collabo. And I'm proud to say this is going to go out on our daily bulletin tomorrow, thanks to Usis Nosi, who provided information for that for us. So this goes out to say, where we are sitting and in our different departments, we really do not know everything. I said in the morning, let's reach out to different units and we work together as one. And also for men, we have the He for She program, and I'm sure also our Mrs. tomorrow from the Department of Higher Education and Training. I know you were there when they were officially doing the He for She HUKZN, and at Forte we've also done that for champions, for males to promote, you know, and also advocate against gender-based violence and promotion. So let's keep working. This has been a very beautiful day. This has been a very informative day. This has been a very long day. But I promise you one thing I know is that we learned and we unlearned and we relearned so many things. With the powers invested in me, I close the first day of the conference. Thank you. Oh, my apologies. Are there any announcements for tomorrow? The LOC must remain behind. Thank you so much. Oh, and there is tea outside. Oh, thank you.